Welcome to Food for Thought Thursday. Today I wanted to take a moment and address probably the most common concern people have when they hear I own a CrossFit gym or they reach out to us and are trying to figure out, am I a good fit for your gym? And that's, is CrossFit dangerous? We're gonna look at some research here because I know there's a lot of media over the last maybe 10 years that has portrayed CrossFit in a certain way. So even some medical professionals who likely didn't do CrossFit themselves had a bad perception. So we're gonna look at some studies that looked at this. It can be really hard to interpret studies. So we're gonna try and explain what they did, how to simplify it, but hopefully in easily digestible terms. And then we have a nice graph. Graphs are way easier to read than studies, and we'll look at that. So the first thing I wanna talk about when we're discussing dangerous is the two aspects of dangerous. One is how often are you getting hurt? The other is how intense is that injury? And let's skip down to this nice graph we have. There's about 7 different sports they looked at. The most dangerous sport in terms of frequency, how often you get hurt, is actually running. Over 30 injuries per 1,000 hours. So if I work out 10 hours a week, I multiply that by how many weeks in a year, which is 52. That's how you can decide how likely am I to get an injury this year and how many injuries should I expect this year in my sport, right? So the less often we do it, it seems the less likely we are to get hurt. And that kind of makes sense. There's another little line here, and what it shows is the majority of the injuries are on this side of the line. The majority of running injuries are non-injurious, meaning maybe it just takes a few days off and then they're back to what they were doing. The next sport up we look at is hockey. Lines at the end. Almost all of the injuries occur and they require some medical attention. And they're at about 25 injuries per 1,000 hours. Next up is soccer. This one's actually outdoor soccer. 50-50 as far as just need a few days off. 50% actually needed some medical attention. A little over 10 injuries per 1,000. Next one up is strongman, about 8. And then we got CrossFit, down around 3 hours. So 3 injuries per 1,000 hours. About 75% required some medical attention. And what in CrossFit we see is back, knees, and shoulders. So 75% of the time, people went to a healthcare provider and likely said, I got something going on, and sought out some treatment. So less likely to have just an irritation, more likely to need treatment. Next, we look at basketball. Slightly less injuries than CrossFit per 1,000 hours. Almost all of them required medical treatment. We're thinking a lot of ACL tears and maybe Achilles ruptures. And then the least dangerous sport in terms of both how often and how intense the injury is actually bodybuilding. And we take this into account at CrossFit Sierra Vista. We had a lot of accessory work at the end, and we also had a lot of tempo work. Those are 2 things that reduce risk of injury. And I do think that it'd be great to add in additional bodybuilding work if your number one focus is not getting hurt. The downside of that is bodybuilding a lot of times doesn't have the aerobic and then also the functional benefits that we see in CrossFit. We're gonna zoom up a little bit, and there was 4 really good studies I looked at. Almost all of them agreed it's about 3 injuries per 1,000 hours. So when studies agree, we can be more confident that it's a good number. And there's 2 factors that actually changed that 3 per 1,000 hours. One was how long you've been doing CrossFit. People that have been doing CrossFit over a year actually were more likely to get hurt. So the idea that I'm concerned about starting CrossFit because I'm worried about injuries, actually, you're less likely to get hurt right off the bat. What we probably see about a year in is we're comfortable with the movements. We start pushing it a little bit. We get into more competitive CrossFit, which is not what we recommend early on. And so we see injuries slightly go up. I would argue that we see that in any sport, that when it goes from recreational to competitive, you're gonna push your boundaries a little bit. The other thing is supervision. The more supervision, the more coaching that was on, really what they just looked at was there a coach there? If you had a coach there, you're less likely to get hurt. So if you're doing some stuff, trying to figure out CrossFit in your garage, you're less likely to get hurt doing it in the gym than you are there. I think at CrossFit Sierra Vista, I'm a physical therapist, I'm the owner. We have a lot of PTs on staff. I think we do a better job than the norm. And in the next video, we're gonna talk a little bit about how can we get that 3 per 1,000 hours to drop down using maybe a personalized assessment or some different strategies. Thanks for listening.